if there was no lockdown, the number of cases would have gone above a crore.
One of the things that we were earlier discussing, that a lot of variables have been accounted for in the model. Currently we are accounting the immunity as well. So when I went through your paper, I realized that we have also accounted for the asymptomatic cases. Now the thumb rule for estimating asymptomatic cases seems to be basically assuming it's roughly 10 times the case count. It's obviously impossible to accurately find the exact number of asymptomatic cases. How has the model accounted for this?
Okay, firstly, this thumb rule is totally wrong. I know that many epidemiologists have worked with this assumption. If you look at, for example, multiple serosurveys, there was a serosurvey conducted by ICMR, 3 of them actually. In each one of them, so especially if you look at the second and third one, the ratio of undetected to detected cases was more than 30. So if one assumes that the ratio is 10, then one is off by a factor of 3 or more. Therefore, the calculation or predictions will not really be accurate. And secondly, it is not that if one assumes this is the ratio for India, the same ratio will hold for every state or every district. That is also not true. Again, some serosurveys have clearly indicated that. Now, in our model, what we do is we have an explicit parameter called epsilon, which measures this ratio. And in the model, we can actually compute the value of epsilon for the region under consideration. The only thing we cannot compute is the initial value of epsilon, that on day one, what was the value of epsilon. If we somehow get that right, then on all subsequent days, we are able to calculate the value. And that gives us a handle, even though, of course, on day one, we may not be able to, because there was no serosurvey done on day one. So clearly, we will know that value. We will not know that value directly. But what we can do is, whenever a serosurvey was done, let's say a serosurvey was done in January, so we make an initial assumption of the value of, that is, assumption of initial value of epsilon, and use our model to say in January what was the value of epsilon, and see if it matches with the actual one. If not, then we adjust the initial value so as to make it match. And that sets up accurately, reasonably accurately, I should say, the initial value of. So using this, so that is for whichever region where we have a reasonably good serosurvey available, we can estimate the undetected cases also fairly well. For example, for India, we have used the third ICMR serosurvey to estimate that this epsilon is 1/33. So that is ratio of undetected to detected cases 33. And our model shows that this number has more or less remained the same throughout last year or plus time period for the country. And this is different states, this number is lower. To a lot more testing, the number naturally is smaller.
One of the questions that people have been raising is the integrity of COVID data collection across the states. Do you feel that the data collection has been compromised? And if so, is it because of the systematic flaws in data collection, or could it be deliberate?
I would say that mostly or broadly, the Indian data is fairly good. Of course, it is not detecting all possible cases. That is a given. However, whatever is that ratio by which it is not detecting, that ratio has, like I just talked about India, that ratio has more or less remained the same throughout, which means that whatever the process is being used to collect data is being followed fairly faithfully, and it is being reported reasonably faithfully. Only when this ratio varies dramatically, that one can start suspecting that, yeah, the reporting is not precise or correct. If it has happened, there are, one could see, for example, uh, for some states, when the numbers were close to the peak, then instead of a natural curve which goes up and then starts gently coming down, you see a kind of a very flat or plateau at the peak. That is an indication that the numbers, reported numbers, are being controlled. But again, that's only done for a short period and for possibly reasons that are well intentioned, that the government doesn't want to create panic in the population that the number of cases have gone up so high. But as soon as the number starts coming down, it kind of they come back to the normal behavior. So, in fact, in our model, we have a way of measuring the quality of data. That is, we compute a point for every day's data. And if the points line up on a straight line, that means the data is reasonably good or close to a straight line. And we find that for India or even states level, the data is very good.
Sir, so how would you compare India's data collection to, let's say, European Union or US for that matter?
Quality-wise, I don't see a lot of difference between Indian data and this Europe or American data. Like I said, because of possibly lot more testing in many European countries and US also, their epsilon value is different than India. But that's the only difference. The rest of it, in terms of data, is just equally good.
Yeah. So earlier in the same point, we were talking about the trajectories. Why are we seeing such a disparity of COVID trajectory between different states in India itself, like say between Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh?
Really, is a function of the strategy adopted by the state. Maharashtra, because they had started rising very early, and similarly Kerala, which had kind of, it actually never came down. So their governments were a lot more cautious and imposed lockdowns or control measures for a very extended period of time. And what that resulted in is that the spread of the infection was slower in these places.
Yeah.
And states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, actually most of the states, the spread was sharp. It kind of this went up quickly and then came down also. But essentially, when the percentage of immune population crosses a certain threshold, then the cases start dropping very rapidly.
Yeah.
That has happened for most of the states. But that has not happened for Maharashtra and Kerala, for example.
This has to do a lot with how the governments have been strategizing to control or curb the whole situation. So this question goes without saying that what is your take on the measures taken by the central government during both first and second wave of COVID?
See, first wave measures were outstanding, I would say, because at that time, nobody knew anything about the nature of the virus, how to treat this infection. Our infrastructure was also extremely poor. PPE kits were not available. RT-PCR testing kits were not available. So really nothing was there. So in that situation, the lockdown when it came was perhaps the best decision that could have been taken. And our analysis, which we did last year, showed that if there was no lockdown, the number of cases would have gone above a crore. And that would have been a disaster, real disaster of very high order. So that I'm talking about the number of active cases, that is, which went up to 10 lakhs, but that would have gone up. And at that time, with no infrastructure in place, no treatment protocol in place, one could only imagine would have been a complete catastrophe. When it comes to the second wave, there was certainly some aspects. Now, here I won't be able to distinguish between central government and state government because they all have to work together in this. But certain measures could have been done better. There was a need to keep a very close watch on the possibility of a second wave and raise an alarm at early sign. So that was not done. When this really is, of course, there is some fault of the governments as well as faults of people like us because we who claim to do the modeling and do predictions, none of us were also able to catch that. Nearly all, I think every epidemiologist who made predictions about second wave in India, and this was in March, they never said that it's going to go beyond 1 lakh infections a day. So that kind of did not really pan out correctly.
One of the things that we realized, and even I realized while I was reading your paper and making the video, was how scarily accurate your predictions were, matching the peak at almost every point. What do you think, even after your sound scientific predictions, what do you think it is that went wrong?
So I should clarify that our predictions are fairly accurate, but only as long as the situation on ground does not change. By that, what I mean is we have a set of parameters. And the two key parameters that govern the pandemic are what are called contact rate and the reach. Contact rate measures how fast the pandemic is spreading in the population. And the reach predicts what fraction of population is currently under the effect of the pandemic. So if these two parameters are kind of more or less constant, then our model can really churn out excellent predictions for what will happen in future. But when one of these two parameters changes, our model does not have a way of predicting when and by how much will any of these parameters will change in future. In fact, nobody can predict that. Change in contact rate is dependent on if there is a new mutant, which is more infectious, or there is a lockdown, which brings down the contact rate. Similarly, reach depends on so many factors that what is the movement of people from one region to another, how fast is the mutant spreading, and so many. So, and these are unknowable. So it really cannot predict when any of these factors will happen. So coming back to the prediction of the model, yes, when the parameters don't change, model is very good, very accurate in predicting how things will go. But when they start changing, the predictions go off. And also, there is a certain period. See, parameters don't change overnight. They will change slowly over a certain period of time. So in that period of time, when the parameter values are changing, our model doesn't really have a way of figuring out what will be the eventual value of this parameter. And so until that time, the model predictions are not good, not accurate. And when the parameter values stabilize, then again it becomes accurate. So this is exactly what happened in beginning of April. For about first 3 weeks of April, the reach parameter was changing quite rapidly. And its value, in fact, doubled in that 3-week period. And that and then in that period, the model predictions were not quite accurate.
One of the things that made me and the whole team at Samachar very fascinated by the model is how basically the model works by predicting the transfer of population, or let's say other macroscopic numbers, across different categories. What we were very curious to know is, where else do you think can this logic or model be applied apart from the medical field? So let's say election results, population demographics, stock markets, or even urbanization.
Yes, this is not the first model its kind. And this modeling exercise for various pandemics has been going on for almost 100 years now. The first model that was proposed called SIR model. And then these models have been refined. Ours is also a refinement of that model. And these earlier models have indeed been applied or used in many, many different domains. Well, including stock market predictions. Now, I don't really know if there has been much success of these models in the other domains. Yeah, I am also not a modeler by my work. It's really, I got into this domain only about a year ago when I started working on this. So my understanding of this domain, at least where all these models have been applied, is not very good. So, but I do know that these models have been used in multiple places, and it would be worthwhile to explore because our model has some very unique characteristics, particularly being able to function with imperfect data. The earlier models, they need perfect data in order to estimate parameters. And since the data is not perfect, so they have to, the modelers have to guess, make an educated guess about the values of parameters. And epidemiologists do this by studying various things like population dynamics, infectiveness of virus, and so on. But our model doesn't need that. It can actually learn the value of parameters from that imperfect data. In general, the data is imperfect. I mean, real data, most of the domain is imperfect. So, with it is certainly, like I said, worthwhile investigating if this model is of some use in these domains.
You have a huge variety of accolades in your name. You have won the Padma Shri as well as Godel for what we call AKS primality test. So, for our audience, can you describe or explain about your Godel Prize winning work?
Well, it was completely different from modeling pandemics. It was a very abstract problem of checking if a given number is prime and doing it efficiently as well as accurately. As it happens, just for giving a motivation for why we need to check if a number is prime. And a lot of payments that one makes online these days, credit card, debit card, now UPI, very large prime numbers are used of the order of 300 digit long. And those numbers are required to be prime, otherwise the security of the transaction will get compromised. So to generate such large prime numbers, you need to test, the ability to test quickly if a number is prime. And so there were methods which were known earlier before our work for checking if large numbers are prime. They were either inefficient or they were not completely accurate. Ours was the first method which was both efficient and completely accurate. That's a brief description of the work.
Yeah. Experts say that there have been three phases of industrialization: mechanization of human work, introduction of electricity, and introduction of the internet. And some say that AI will unleash the fourth phase of industrialization. And every phase that we have gone through, the transition has led to the upheaval in the short term. how do you see AI affecting at large? Will it be mostly positive or negative to the people?
It certainly looks as if AI is going to have a huge impact on our lives.
Hmm.
It already is having, and it will only increase with time. What AI does is, at least for now, it provides huge convenience for us to, whether it is in speech or processing. Everybody, let's take a small example. Now everybody can take wonderful photographs. Why? Because it doesn't matter what you shoot. There is an AI-based algorithm which will make it look nice. So
Hmm.
many things are really, really convenient for
Hmm.
us to do. And that's why there is a lot of adaptation for AI-based tools, and this will continue to increase with time. Now, it will cause upheaval, of course, because there will be some kind of jobs which will not be uh,
Hmm.
or useful, but some other kinds of job will become more important. And these days,
Hmm.
somebody who is well trained in AI use of AI tools and is in great demand, and they are
Hmm.
getting hired at very good salaries, and there is a serious shortage of such people.
Yeah.
So now, whether it's going to be good or bad is really a philosophical discussion. You can view it from different lenses, and you'll find both good and bad.
Hmm.
Uh, which in general is for general with progress. I mean, it's like I said, the way things are progressing, they're providing a lot of
Hmm.
convenience. They are
Yeah.
making people more aware of things which are happening all over.
Hmm.
Not just AI, with the proliferation of internet everywhere, access to information to
Yeah.
everyone. You can have everybody can actually now cook very well. Just open a YouTube channel and some good, it will walk you through a nice recipe.
Yeah.
So these things are, so everybody has access to this useful information. So that
Hmm.
makes it a lot more convenient for people. But it's
Yeah.
also making people lazy. This spread of information has both positive and negative aspects. Negative aspects are that one, you get an information overload. There is just too much
Yeah.
information.
Hmm.
You need to
True.
have the ability to sort out good from bad information. There is so much of fake information also that goes around. And if you don't have
Hmm.
the ability to, or you don't make an effort to distinguish correct from fake,
Yeah.
you will get often misled, and that can
Hmm.
have disastrous consequences. Now, there are, of course, AI tools which are claimed to be able to distinguish fake information from correct information, but those tools are in their infancy, and I'm not sure if they will eventually work perfectly, because you can even those tools may have certain biases inherent, and they have certain inherent
Yeah.
biases. And if people start using them blindly, then it's a disaster of a higher order.
So, as you were talking about information overload, do you think that this information overload has had a major contribution in creating panic in this lockdown, or for that matter, the whole COVID situation?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's for example, this whole oxygen shortage, I think, was really, wasn't the situation was not as bad as it became, because everybody wanted oxygen, whether they were ill or not ill with the mild symptoms, that didn't matter. Everybody wanted oxygen because that's what is being said. If you don't have oxygen, you will die. So this
Hmm.
kind of, I mean, rumors were always floating around. Yes, it was not that something new, but just that with the advent of internet and easy access, the speed at which rumors spread has gone up phenomenally. and the reach of a rumor has also gone up phenomenally. Earlier, these things were localized. Now they are all globalized. So that's a big problem, and there is really no way of addressing that problem. People can try doing. Governments are also trying to do that. They're okay. Let's try to find a source of who created the rumor. This is what the recent law that has been passed, and
the new IT law, yes.
WhatsApp, etc., are having some issues with that. These are all attempts, but it's like I think it's very hard to control. And if they can, governments will do that, then alternate mechanism will be found by people who want to spread this, and this will continue.
So this question goes for our audience that will be hearing you soon. What is your advice for curious minds that want to take up scientific research as a career?
See, number one, you should be ambitious, and in the sense that do not think you are second to anyone. I found observed a lot of our scientists in India be very differential. That they will look at a hard problem and say, "Okay, this we cannot solve. This will be solved only by top scientists of the world, and I am not one of them." So that kind of approach precludes great discoveries. You will never be able to discover something good if you don't even attempt it. And I see no reason, in fact, in all my interactions in so far with scientists of different nationalities, I found that Indian brains are as good as any other. So there is no real reason why we have to be differential or we have to think that we cannot do it. That's point one. And second point, and especially true with budding, those who take up science, is to have humility. Never ever believe that science is the beginning and end of everything. See, you should never be dogmatic. I find many scientists become so stuck up with the scientific method that they start saying or believing that something that cannot be scientifically proven is false. That is a really a wrong attitude. What one should have an attitude is if something cannot be scientifically proven, is one cannot prove it to be, one doesn't know whether it is true or false, and one can take as a without a scientific proof of its correctness, it would be hard to have a wide acceptance of that whatever claim. That is the correct view of this. But if one starts viewing that if it is not scientifically proven, it is false, then you are actually precluding a lot of, again, very interesting scientific discoveries, because scientific progress happens only when you come across a phenomenon that you cannot explain scientifically as per the current knowledge, and then you progress on that.
We'll be proceeding towards the end, but I just have one question, or for that matter, a comment. While I was going through the paper, I realized how you connected the name Sutra with its medieval Hindu origins. Was the name intentional? Was it your intent?
So firstly, it's not a medieval; it's an ancient Hindu origins. Sutra, I mean, this Yoga Sutra and so on. So many other sutras have been around for a long time. Okay. It was not intentional, really. See, we created this. There is a tradition in the modeling community to name the model after the first letters of the categories. Like SIR model is susceptible, infected, removed. That's how I say it. we had 4 categories: susceptible, undetected positive, tested positive, and removed. So SUTR. So that's what the initial name was, SUTR model. And then suddenly Professor Vidyasagar, one of our 3 of us who worked on the model, he said, I don't like this acronym, and let me add an A to this, and it becomes SUTRA.
That was something that really caught my eye. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time for us today. It was really great to talk to you and to know more, not just about the model, but how in general COVID has affected the country and the people, and how your model has been one of the saviors for that matter in this situation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you.
Like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon to never miss any updates from Samachar.